Good afternoon. My name is Jeanette Pierce, and I'm one of the program planners for this week's symposium. We hope that you have enjoyed and learned from the programs you have attended thus far. I'm very excited to welcome you to this afternoon's program, Grassroots OER, Advocating for an OER Repository for English Language Teaching and Learning. Before introducing the program and the speakers, I want to share a few logistical details with you. First, the live captioning is available during the presentation. Please find the link located under the Handouts tab. The session will be recorded and provided within the event portal following the symposium. Please keep your symposium login information. A copy of the PowerPoint presentation will be provided under the Handouts tab. Please enter all questions into the discussion forum. I will share questions with the presenters after they have completed sharing their presentation. We encourage you to engage with us and each other through the discussion forum as well. If you have any technical issues during the program, the MEC staff are behind the scenes to provide support. Just reach out using the live support button. Also, please provide your feedback on this session through the survey that will pop up when you leave the session. Also, if any of you attended sessions yesterday and did not have the option to fill out a survey after a presentation, if you'd like to do so, you can go back into the presentation space and leave again, and the pop-up survey should be working. They had some technical issues with that yesterday. So, and I think that's all I need to say on logistics. We apologize for any inconvenience on the pop-up surveys yesterday. So I'm very pleased to introduce this afternoon's program and speakers, especially as I worked with ESL students for many years when I was at St. Louis University in the 1990s. And I am a longtime member of the American Library Association's International Relations Roundtable. In this session, our speakers will share their initiative for an OER repository for under-resourced countries, which sounds like a fantastic project to me. We will hear from three presenters today. Chadia Mansour is an applied linguist with over 17 years of teaching experience in English as a second language and language and discourse across culture. And she has experience teaching in physical and blended environments, curriculum development, and instructional design. Currently, Chadia is a doctoral candidate in distance and online education with a focus on online assisted second language acquisition. Charity Davenport has an MS in TESOL and is an instructor at the English Language Institute at the University of Tennessee-Knoxville and a member of the university's Online Global Learning Initiative. She is also working on a second master's in instructional technology. She is the author of the open textbook, It's All Greek to Me, and the open ESL resource, Writing with Grammar. Sharon Tjaden-Glass taught ESL in higher education for 13 years, and she is current community manager for the Intercultural Communication Interest section of TESOL International. And she holds an MA in TESOL and a graduate certificate in Technology Enhanced Learning. Please join me in welcoming our speakers, and Chadia will go ahead and get us started today.
Thank you. So greetings from Toronto, Canada. Whether you're watching us live right now or watching the recording, thank you for your interest in our presentation, Grassroots OER, Advocating for an OER Repository for English Language Teaching and Learning. The theme of this symposium is OER care, and we're all here today because we care about social justice and educational equity around the world. My colleagues and I are pleased to share with you how we care through our initiative and advocacy for an OER repository for the English language educators around the world under the umbrella of TESOL International Association. So in this presentation, we will cover the problem, the intervention, the solution, the leadership strategies, and also we will briefly report on what we have done so far. As a refresher, we're proposing that the TESOL International Association website to be used to host an open educational resources repository to address the educational inequities between developing and developed countries. So this is our case study. educational inequity between developing and developed countries in teaching English to speakers of other languages, TESOL, exists. TESOL International Association is leading the English language teaching and learning field as the trusted authority for knowledge and expertise, and is striving to be the voice of English language professionals at a global level. However, most of its teaching resources are restricted to the membership at large and do not respond to the need of under-resourced TESOL communities worldwide. Therefore, we are proposing that the TESOL International Association website to be used and hosted an OER repository. We'll also be exploring the role of various leadership strategies to address the planning and execution of this project. So we're going to explore the socioeconomic problem in the form of two scenarios. The first scenario here, I'd like you to imagine that you're an English teacher in a developed country and you want to prepare a lesson plan for tomorrow's class. So most probably you'll have a textbook, a workbook, realia, a lot of pictures, cards, games, and others. Tech has a computer, access to internet. You have access to Google for extra material ideas and material, and also access to professional development and associations, and have membership for more resources and ideas. Learn about theoretical pedagogical knowledge. But if you are an English teacher in a developing country and you want to prepare a lesson plan for tomorrow's class, if you may have pens and papers, and you may not in many cases and places. Also, you may have a textbook or workbook, if any. You will have limited resources for realia, limited technology. So you may need to go to a public internet hub to access and download resources, or just browse through mobile if you have data for that. And most of your resources, the resources you find on the internet are paid for or closed for membership. So you can't really afford PD sessions or associations, and you cannot pay for the membership for those associations. Now over to Charity. She will tell you more about this socioeconomic problem.
All right, so yes, I'm going to talk about the why of our topic and provide some background information before we go into more details about our project. So UNESCO has provided some useful data concerning gaps in education. For example, while these numbers are all 100 or very close to 100 for high-income countries, in low-income countries, it's very different. The average literacy rate in youth is 76. The rate of trained teachers in primary education is 72. And the average primary completion rate is 67. So as you can see, there's a big gap in education levels between high-income and low-income countries. So what does this all mean? So part of the reason for the low rates is due to education being seen more as a commodity than a service that should be provided freely to all people. Neoliberalism is now deeply rooted in every aspect in society, and education is no exception. Top-down policies led by the public sector can be affected by the business sector that tries to dominate education in an effort to produce consumers. And so I think OER is one of the best ways to kind of go against this. And another possible strategy is basically our project to diversify the top-down initiatives guided by neoliberalism to build a bottom-up power base with collective intelligence shared by multiple stakeholders. And NPOs such as the TESOL International Association will be able to help with this bottoms-up initiative. And now I'm over to Sharon.
Okay, so now that we've talked about the why of our topic, educational inequity, I'm going to focus on the what. Our way of addressing educational inequity centers on our areas of expertise, which is English language teaching. The three of us are TESOL members. In fact, that was how we met each other. Chadia put a call out on a discussion board for volunteers to help her put together a proposal about creating a place to store OER on TESOL's website. And Cherry and I were crazy enough to volunteer our time and respond to her call. It's been totally a good crazy, though. So let me share a little bit about TESOL International so you can understand its purpose as a professional organization. According to their website, TESOL International, quote, advances the expertise of professionals who teach English to speakers of other languages in multilingual contexts worldwide. We accomplish this through professional learning, research, standards, and advocacy. So it is an organization for English language teaching professionals. TESOL identifies their core values as follows. First, professionalism, committed excellence in standards, research, and practice. Second, respect, committed to equity and diversity. Third, integrity, committed to ethical and transparent action. And fourth, lifelong learning, committed to quality ELT opportunities throughout life. So what TESOL currently has that is kind of similar to an OER repository, but not really, as we're going to explain, they have the TESOL Resource Center. And what this is a space on the TESOL website that's designated for members to share their lesson plans, teaching tips, activities, assessment tools, and much more. So it is like a community of practice where teachers can freely share resources and teaching ideas. However, authors of these free resources cannot choose how they want to share content or direct attribution and use requirements that they would with a Creative Commons license. So what we're advocating for as an OER repository is a bit different than that. So that leads us to our problem statement. The major issue here is related to the fact that many resources are closed to membership, which by default excludes non-members. And this is considered a major disadvantage for ELT communities in developing countries and under-resourced communities abroad, and actually here too in the US. While several resources are freely accessible to any internet user, only TESOL members can add items to the TESOL Resource Center. Also, many items are locked for members access only. So if you're not paying membership dues, you can't get access to those. And also resources retain their original copyrights unless creators have added a Creative Commons license. And in my experience, not many of the resources in the TRC do, because most people don't know about Creative Commons licenses. And next slide. And so I talked a little bit about the first two challenges that you see on this slide. So yes, the TESOL Resource Center resources are free, but searches within the TRC don't typically yield readily usable educational resources that can be easily remixed and applied to another context. I've used it myself, and I'll get something and I'm like, well, this isn't really helpful for my class. And also I don't even know if I'm allowed to change anything in this because it doesn't have a CC license. In addition, searches in the TESOL Resource Center yield items that are copyrighted, and users need to seek permission to remix and share the materials. Secondly, another challenge is that under-resourced ELT in developing communities leads to the need for people to have access to OER. So we have two examples here. One, hey, Chadia, where's Kuchat from? Do you remember?
Nigeria.
Nigeria. Okay, so in Nigeria, we're seeing lack of textbooks, lack of libraries, poor exposure to English language usage, and lack of financial material resources. And in South Africa, we also have an author talking about critically limited resources ranging from libraries and laboratories and even basic learning materials such as books. So if we're coming from countries where it's hard to even get those particular materials, OER can really fill a gap that's needed. And our third challenge relates to leadership. So this challenge, as every professional organization knows, the pandemic has not been kind to revenue streams of nonprofit organizations. Educational budgets are being cut across the board, and there are much fewer financial resources available for educators to use on professional development, which membership to TESOL International often falls under for teachers. This is not solely reflective of TESOL International. All professional organizations are facing these challenges. So when we started collaborating with each other, it was October 2019, and we did not realize that we would be doing much of our work during a pandemic. And when we met with TESOL leadership, after we'd put together our rationale and our proposal, it was July, right? July 2020, Chadia?
That is correct.
All right. So just for the context, not only did we receive the hard news that there would be no financial support for our efforts, which I don't think we were expecting because we kind of knew it's a pandemic and everyone's hurting, but simply because the organization was trying to survive. We knew that it wasn't anything to do with what we were doing, but we were also faced with questions of how this OER repository would not only pay for itself, but also generate revenue for the organization. And these were questions we did not have the answers to and that we needed to investigate further. In addition to the challenge of revenue, we were faced with the constant changes in leadership as professional organizations cycle through leaders annually and biannually. So Chadia has much more history in this than Charity and I do. Chadia has been doing this for 5 years.
Yep.
5 years.
Yes.
Plodding along. We found that we were constantly briefing new leaders about what OER is, what we were trying to do, why it was important. We would gain support only in time for a new leader to come into play, and then we'd have to start all over again. So there's just the simple fact that institutional change is hard, not because of one person or one group of people, but when policies and protocols are put in place, it can make it extremely hard for change to occur. And I think that leads us to you, Chadia.
Thank you, Sharon.
Mm-hmm.
So Charity shared the how for this project, and Sharon was talking. Charity was shared about the why, and Sharon was just briefing us on the what. And right now, I'd like to move to the how. So we are proposing, or what we have already proposed, is the TESOL OER repository as a solution to the educational inequity between developed and developing countries, and within also the under-resourced communities, even within the developed countries themselves worldwide. So it is a solution that serves as a venue to support the under-resourced TESOL communities around the world in general, including those who you may think wouldn't need, like the United States, for instance, or Canada, where I am right now, or Europe, or many other countries. So this initiative intends to break down the economic barriers and possibly the social barriers to information. And it also promotes civic engagement, as we're doing right now, the three of us. It advances and enhances access to knowledge, and that is really our vision and inspiration. And collaborate in a meaningful and intentional manner. There's also, we have been enacting this for the last 2 years together. Now, Charity will share with you the benefits of OER.
All right. So, of course, like we've mentioned before, English language teachers, especially in developing countries, need free and open teaching materials that are easy to locate, access, and most importantly, be able to edit those materials to fit their own context and needs. And they need to be able to do that without fear of copyright infringement or, without, not knowing anything about the licenses. They don't know what they can do really with these materials. So a separate OER tab on our TESOL website would benefit members, but also, most importantly, non-members globally. TESOL can clearly set parameters for the ELT OER guidelines, the process and implementation. They can also ensure OER quality and sustainability of its uses. We're thinking about ways to build in like peer review so that we can ensure the quality and have a set of rubrics for them to peer review the materials. And TESOL would be a hub for under-resourced countries to access and download OER and hopefully narrow the educational inequity in the English language teaching field. And now I think we're over to Sharon.
Okay. All right, so we've made clear that we're trying to create an OER repository on TESOL International's website. So in order to do that, we need the support of leadership. To this end, we are engaging with leadership in several ways. So first, we're reaching out to TESOL communities of practice, which are self-organized groups of TESOL members that share common interests. There are currently 20 different interest sections and 12 professional learning networks that we can reach out to for collaboration in our efforts to create guidelines for creating and submitting OER to such a repository. Second, we're reaching out to professional councils as we consider how to design an OER repository. We would like to follow other successful entities such as BC Campus and eCampus Ontario, looking at their goals and structure and how they link to members' needs, the processes they use, the tools available to measure quality and effectiveness, and the ways that skill acquisition is documented and credentialed. We are also recruiting OER experts to educate, engage, and empower members and non-members on creating quality ELT OER. We are currently hosting a series of webinars with published OER experts, including Dr. Ebba Ossianelson, I cannot get her name.
Ossianelson.
And Dr. Nellie Deutsch. We are presenting at annual convention panels and presentations, and we are creating an OER proposal review committee to filter quality ELT OERs and populate the repository. In addition to our individual efforts, leadership is also needed to engage TESOL members and non-members to create OER to cater to their own needs and the needs of under-resourced ELT communities. And finally, we're recruiting affiliates, of which there are 120 affiliates for TESOL affiliates for online collaborations and hopefully face-to-face collaborations in the future now that the vaccine is starting to get around. But until now, we've been engaged in educating TESOL members through about OER through webinars and newsletter articles, as well as working with other TESOL members that have expressed interest in supporting our efforts. And I think that brings us back to Chadia.
Thank you. So we'll dig more into the how again and the leadership strategies that will help us execute this. So what we're proposing is an innovative solution that acknowledges and respects the fact that there is no one-size-fits-all leadership. So we're proposing several phases for this OER repository project. The first phase will be the pilot phase, and then the transition phase, the implementation, and an ongoing phase. It will never end, right? So these require multiple leadership strategies. One of them is transformational leadership. The other one is transformative leadership, distributed and emergent leadership strategies. And I will talk a little bit about those. So our vision for creating an OER repository for TESOL International requires these different types that I just mentioned in the execution of such a project. I will start now with the first one, which is transformational leadership, leadership for change, as it's also known for. Transformational leadership is crucial for any change to occur, to embrace the vision, to support the efforts of followers, and to be willing to face challenges. And as Sharon mentioned earlier, change has been really hard to lead or to push forward in the last 5 years so far. So for our OER repository, TESOL International transformational leaders would embrace the OER vision and support any effort that would lead to such a change. both ways, right? Top down as the presidents or the board members, or even bottom up, such as the support of the interest sections that would come from, for instance, or and members like us as well. Those who showed interest in OER, and that's people from professional councils in joining our efforts and leading such a change. There are also communities of practice. And again, the three of us have been acting for the last 2 years as we work on the OER repository project. We were leaders of interest sections. Then we rotated out of that leadership. And for the last 2 years, we are simply members that meet online. So we have created a community of practice to work on this project. Transformational leaders are role models for lifelong learning, and in their drive to affect change, they value others. The leadership is provided through a framework of multiple resources, and they become servants to others. So transformational leadership is ideal for the OER pilot because these leaders will champion the change in the organization. And despite the challenges of rotation leadership in TESOL that Sharon mentioned earlier, we have gained the support of several transformational leaders that showed they are willing to serve the under-resourced communities by guiding us on pathways and providing insights and making us aware of the potential challenges the association will be facing to make such a repository a reality. We thank those who supported us, like Deborah Healy, the currently past president of TESOL, also the current interim executive director, Rosa Aronsing, for their support and being transformational leaders. And we are hopeful that the upcoming leaders, once these rotate out, will be transformational as well. Our recommended leadership for the transition phase is transformative leadership. Now, transformational and transformative, people may think, you would think they're the same, but they are not. They're completely two different leadership theories because the incentives and the motives are different. I mean, mutual, but the start is different. The difference here, transformation and transformative leadership is is characterized by justice, democracy, and initiatives that serve both the individual and the public. And that it's the starting point of this leadership is to adopt the vision of transformative change to meet educational equity and to inspire the membership and leaders at the top level for the TESOL OER. TESOL is the voice of many ELT teachers and learners, indeed. And in fact, TESOL advocacy is rooted in responding to unjust and inequitable practices in the field of education. As we shared, the OER repository project will be used to create change in terms of the type of resources shared with members and non-members, with a special focus on the under-resourced communities and therefore rooted in social justice. However, the actual execution of the project requires more involvement from the different communities of practice, the interest sections, leaders at the top level, leaders at the bottom level, and even the membership at large. And also, let's not forget about the 120 plus TESOL affiliates. I mean, if all of us would put hand in hand all together, I think this would be a reality. And I'm hopeful it will be a reality sometime, right? So both distributed leadership and emergent leadership are also needed to support the OER repository initiative at TESOL. So I'll talk about the distributed leadership, which is here leadership for implementation and ongoing operations. So in distributed leadership, there is the potential for individuals at all levels of the organization to engage in leadership roles. You don't have to be acting as the chair of the EFLIS or ICIS or council or anything, but everybody could be a leader here. Also, collaborating on tasks allows for the distribution of knowledge needed for the project. So that's what distributed means in here as well. We have to be aware of the cons of this distributed leadership, such as it might be difficult to coordinate tasks led by many leaders in one organization. However, distributed leadership has a potential for member engagement, organizational change, and sustainability of leadership. We've learned a lot, right? The three of us within across these 2 years, and we had many connections and many insights, and we have been filling in this spots of leadership at different moments. Sometimes Charity is the leader, sometimes Sharon is the leader, sometimes I am the leader, sometimes we're swarming together, right? Yeah. So one element that can help distributed leadership work is flexibility, which can be supported by emergent leadership. So emergent leadership is defined as leadership that occurs when an individual who has not been assigned a formal leadership role assumes leadership within a group. Individuals who possess leadership traits that fit to the particular setting tend to emerge as leaders within their groups. Resistance might arise if the setting is grounded in a more formal approaches to leadership, but flexibility that can be achieved by emergent leadership is a key for the organization to respond to various changes in society, which is in our case, the development of the OER to support and the resource ALT communities. So the three of us actually represent a good example of emergent and distributed leadership, as we are not assigned a leadership role by TESOL International Association, but we are simply members of TESOL that have a shared vision, connected through my TESOL and maintained online collaboration as we work towards advocating for TESOL OER repository. And we have not yet met face-to-face.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that crazy?
I know. We were hoping to do so last year in the convention, and then it got canceled, right? So yeah, maybe next year.
Yeah.
So now that we have not met face-to-face, but we're still working together, and all our communication has been via emails, Skype, Zoom, and social media. In our journey for TESOL OER, and in the general context of the association, we have been acting as emergent leaders, where we join forces and support and lead one another in tasks that we have undertaken for such a project. And this month, we're lucky to have 2 other people who believe in OER and reach out to us to maybe, hopefully, they will join our efforts. Now, Charity will talk about the TESOL OER ontology.
All right. So we talked about the different kinds of leaders, and in addition to having these kinds of leaders, they stick with our vision and they understand our vision, but they also need to have a good understanding of the ontology of OER. So all leaders at all levels need to be educated on open resources, and in particular, be aware of what open means. What is the definition of open? How does it relate to the 5 R's? Retain, reuse, revise, remix, redistribute, and how that benefits everyone. And that's why we want to make this OER repository. Usually the next step in that is going beyond understanding and then kind of like the implementation. How does OER affect how we teach or our teaching practices with open pedagogy, which outlines 3 sets of foundational values, such as autonomy and interdependence, including self-regulated learning, freedom and responsibility, and democracy and participation. Some of the themes that we will recognize are individualized learning, learner choice, and self-direction. Also, OER-enabled pedagogy, and BC Campus is, again, a good reference to educate leaders about how to do that, how to put that pedagogy into practice using OER and definitely providing real English language teaching examples to help with that. And lastly is the OER Creative Commons ontology related to licensing, which of course is crucial, especially for distributed and emergent leaders involved in the creation of OERs and the design of the repository.
Yep. Thank you. And Sharon?
Yeah.
And I will be talking about the issues that still need to be considered. So first, the infrastructure for our information communication technology. We found some possible solutions, including Eduroam, MoodleNet, or mobile OER. Our second issue to consider is the sustainability of leadership. So it takes time for transformation. So we need sustainable leadership, which will be realized through integration of multiple leadership theories, such as distributed and emergent leadership, which Chadia mentioned before. And finally, our third issue to consider is that their research on OER is still young. There's a gap between potential technologies and their actual use in practice, some things we just don't know yet.
Thank you, Sharon. So now I will tell you the story of this OER advocacy journey, basically. So we'll report of what we've done so far. So as Sharon mentioned earlier, I had this vision of an OER repository for TESOL International to serve the under-resourced ELT communities around the world in 2017 during my 3 years of leadership for TESOL English as a Foreign Language intersection. So for the first 2 years, I was trying to get the ball rolling by doing the talk about this initiative via multiple channels, such as posting on my TESOL platform, calling the membership at large to be involved, and asking for collaboration from intersection leaders, sending emails back and forth, and discussions with the staff members actually endured change as well in staff. So they changed and I had to rebrief and debrief again the next person of what really I mean by having this OER and what is needed for, etc. And also, I had a lot of discussions of the need for OER and the urgency for this initiative of the repository during the convention. 2, 3, 4, how many conventions so far? Right?
A lot.
Yeah, so which is a great, I look forward for the convention because you get to see people talk face to face. So it's a little easier than just emails that tend to sometimes fall under the radar, right? Mm-hmm. So it was in those conventions that, for instance, in the leadership forums that they have, in the IS leadership meetings, in informal, dinners, and so on and so forth, that I got the attention of, the educators and, the leaders over there about this OER. And in Atlanta, the last convention that happened face-to-face, I got a collective long applaud and the IS leaders meeting, showing their support for my initiative. But unfortunately, there have been only a few leaders, such as Heather Benucci, that I cannot really thank enough from the Call IS, and Lisa Horvath from the Mathilde Ryder IS, who actually puts me in contact with a charity. That's how I met Charity, yes. She's a member of the Mathilde Ryder IS. And they've reached out to me and they supported me since then. Then Sharon, the solo, who took the initiative to reach out to me and respond to my calls. She reached out to me via LinkedIn. Yeah, and I was so happy. I'm like, yay, somebody's listening. Yeah. And somebody's going to help.
You're not screaming into the void, Chadia.
Yes. And that's how the three of us, we met, and since then, we've become a community of practice and a great team.
Yeah.
We got the support of the executive leadership. Back then, there was Chris Power and president as well, Deborah Healy, as I mentioned, and still providing us with guidance and advice. And we drafted for a year. We worked for a year. We drafted the proposal, or the following, the guidelines that I'd like to share very quick with you now, just to give it a glance. So this document, to introduce, the idea of the OER, and to serve, hopefully in the future, as the guidelines of this project. Introducing the purpose, the rationale, the peer definition and scope. Also goes into what is OER, the benefits, the forms, different types, and how to guidelines for creating OER. So understanding, identifying, selecting, and the long list, remixing, how to add metadata, adapting. So basically, it also includes resources on open pedagogy, designing and publishing, the repositories, toolkits, licensing, etc. So this has been, we've put a lot, this is 25 pages, we've put a lot of effort in this. And as you can see, Rosa and Deborah providing us with insights as the top leaders in here. The challenge in this has been the guidelines to simplify it, right? Because there's a lot to learn about and a lot to share. So it's been very challenging to make it simple. And we're hoping that one day we will use this. So let's go back here. So the pandemic has slowed down again our efforts. As we mentioned, the change in leadership, but Rosa luckily, took the time to meet with us several times and, and support us. But we took a different route, though, from starting with guidelines as the previous leadership, recommended. Right now, we're then the process, and then raising awareness. Currently, the post-pandemic that we've been doing is the very opposite. We're back to doing raising awareness, and then we're going to talk about the process. Maybe that's in the next steps. We still need to meet again and see how we are going to move forward with this. But accordingly, after meeting with the President-elect Gabriela Klenkova and Rosa Aronson, the acting interim executive leader of TESOL International, we launched a raising awareness about OER within the TESOL community campaign. So in December, we published an article about OER in TESOL Connections. And then in January, we launched a series of webinars in collaboration with the CallIS. The first one is the OER 101, when you had 4 speakers. Sharon and Charity they were 2 of those speakers. And then also we had a big name, Dr. Osialenson from Eating, and as a featured speaker talking about the OER movement and social justice in ELT in February. And tomorrow, as a matter of fact, so if you're watching us right now, you can find us on LinkedIn and register. There's a link to register for tomorrow's session, because we are hosting a hands-on workshop this time about Wiki Educator and how to create OER projects. So we have very good attendance. We had over 120 in the first webinar. We had 98 registrants for the second one. And we have over 100 that I know, Sharon, for tomorrow.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
I'm going to put the link into the discussion too, so people can.
Oh, yes. That's a great idea. Yes. Thank you, Sharon.
Mm-hmm.
And we have also one more coming event we're hosting with TESOL, Affiliate Network Professional Council, 4 presentations to showcase and provide concrete examples of ELT teacher-created OER. Of course, we are the one who are reaching out to these presenters and recruiting them. So there is also a lot of work behind the scenes just to get these events done. So we're also investigating and seeking ways to address the challenges related to the infrastructure, as Sharon mentioned, funding and expenses in order to help inform and support TESOL on the logistics and finance of such a repository. This is, of course, just the beginning after 5 years. And a lot more is required. And for that, we need everybody's help. Thank you for your attention. And if you are interested in helping us and move this initiative forward with us, please reach out to us. Thank you very much. And now I think we can open it for discussions and questions.
Thank you all very much. This is Jeanette, the moderator, and I really appreciated that entire presentation. I encourage those in attendance to submit their questions in the discussion forum if they have any today. We'll be happy to address those with the remainder of the time in the session. With that, I was just, I wrote down words as you were talking through your presentation, and having worked in large organizations, professional organizations and libraries, I really appreciate the long-term nature of this process. I wrote down persistence, tenacity, flexibility, and patience as the key qualities you need to.
Not madness? No madness?
No madness. No insanity, no. No, you have a clear vision. So that's really great. I had a question. I was interested, one of the things we talk about sometimes OER in my institution and encouraging faculty to create OER is that idea of quality. I think you mentioned maybe thinking about peer review and how if it's going up on the TESOL website and that TESOL is giving it basically some sort of credibility by allowing it to be there, putting it there, how do you think about quality and peer review and how that might look organizationally going forward?
Well, we talked about doing like a cover letter, like having people submit like, maybe not a cover letter, but like some kind of submission form to kind of show people what they need. We also talked about, so you mentioned having a peer review committee. So people who serve on a committee to just kind of review what's coming in. We talked about having a rating system, maybe like users actually like rating materials as sometimes is done in a repository. Chadia, what do you have to add?
One of the suggestions that we made to the executive leadership is to form a committee, an OER committee, to filter these, material for review, and also to have an OER day in the convention or theme, right? For those who are interested in OER to submit their papers or their material and present about them first, actually, in the convention. And then after doing that, they will, since they're going to be talking about them, there is a first filtration, let's say, right? They've been filtered to be presenting. So it's good quality in the first place to be presented at TESOL. And we all know in TESOL International, it's not an easy, submission. If you submit, it's very competitive. It's got to be quality for you to be presenting over there.
Yeah.
So that's the first step. So you present about it, and then you have the option to go through the review, because it's also very important to make sure that the content is free from any, discriminatory or, racist or any of those sort of things, content when it comes to the actual material to be published. So these are ideas right now that we have in terms of quality. Yeah. We'll see what happens next. We are open to to ideas. But some people think that, teachers are not going to be, I mean, we understand it's time consuming, and that teachers will not maybe have the time to do that, but maybe they will not have the time to create something from scratch. But if they are educated about how to license what they have.
That's a huge problem, is like in teacher education, it starts there. If you're leaving from a teacher education program, you have no idea what OER is. I mean, you may not even know that you could be giving away your materials, to people who might need them. I have created so much stuff in the last 13 years. And to think and I'm just a giving person. I would totally just give my work away for free. If I'd known about that, I'd be slapping CC licenses on all this stuff and giving it away for free. But I think a lot of it, I mean, that's why I've been posting these webinars within teacher education interest section, because I really think it's important that this kind of information starts when you are a student, knowing that this is a thing. I have, not to go on too much of a tangent, but I have two friends who just moved to Tunisia for a job. His job, and he's taking all these amazing pictures, and I'm like, dude, you need to put these out on Creative Commons. And he's like, what are you talking about? Oh my God. So I showed him, I'm like, he has this one picture of a library that looks like the stacks go all the way to the ceiling, and it looks super cool. And I'm just like, this is the kind of stuff I would love to have to decorate a PowerPoint to make it look more engaging, but just people don't know.
But you know that I'm from Tunisia, right?
Are you from Tunisia?
Yes.
I don't think I ever asked where you were from.
Yeah, I'm from Tunisia originally.
Nice.
Yeah. So yes, and the charity also in our discussion talked about how we can, it's not that complicated to use what you have, right, Charity?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as Sharon. Is I've made so much stuff from scratch, and one of my goals is just I want to go through it all. Yeah, slap that CC license on it and give it away. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm thinking that, and we talked about this as well. I mean, in our meetings and then the future sessions of these webinars, one of the sessions that we'll be holding is how to do the licensing, right? You hear CC BY and NA and all that, complex, seem to be complex, but once we're going to give a hands-on workshop on how to do it, then you can, turn your extra material that we all have extra stuff in the teacher, textbooks. Most of the textbooks that I use in my classrooms would just put aside and create other stuff, right? To support them and to support the needs and the local needs of our students. I taught in the United States, international students. I taught ESL students. I taught also in Tunisia. I taught in the Gulf. And these are completely different contexts and needs. And every time we create extra things. So we are calling those teachers who have extra material to, let's say, put the license, make it, turn it into OER. You get credit for that by attribution for those who will use it. They will be using it, and they will also have the ability to refine according to their own needs. So everybody will be saving time, and everybody will be benefiting from that, I believe. And I don't know if we have any questions in here or not.
I do not see any new questions in there. I did also wonder about the guidelines and if those are accessible right now or something that you're working on within a smaller group still as a draft.
Well, that's a good question. I mean, the guidelines that we've been working, we created those together, the three of us. Yeah. And we were hoping that that will be the start of adopting this idea of OER. But now, as I mentioned, we're in the very opposite direction of raising awareness first and kind of see how the membership at large, whether with the TESOL members or the affiliates would be interested in OER. And I think so far within 3 events, definitely everybody's interested. We had a poll in our last webinar asking if they would be, and everybody said yes, 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 everyone, And the high attendance also shows that and proves that even though teachers are not aware of OER, but they are willing to learn about OER, and they are willing to use OER. So I am hoping that we get into the April event with the Affiliate Network Professional Council, the attention of the affiliates, because that would be, TESOL International is the mother of all, but everybody has their own needs and they have their own structure, they have their own, system. And if we get them on board, we would like to have one repository. It would be really more beneficial to everybody be on board for one big repository under TESOL International that everybody will benefit from, instead of having separate repositories, within their own. And most of the resources that we found are from Canada, and I'm currently, based in Canada right now, the BC campus, and the great stuff. Here in Canada, so if you're in a very simple comparison, we're between the United States and Europe, right? Is there the system, right? Not European, not like US systems. The Canadian system has this, social part, not as socialism. I know Americans freak out when they hear the word socialism, but that's not socialism. But they have that social, the care that that this symposium is about. They do have that care and that social aspect and social justice in education. They're big in open education. They're leading. My university is a pioneer in distance education. And they have also they're great on open education. They have projects with the Commonwealth for MOOCs, etc. with for the same purpose of the OER. So we have a lot of work to do still, to look at these examples and to look at the finance part and the infrastructure part and how it's going to work. We're trying to gather as much information as possible. For not to make a case here, we are here to support TESOL. We understand all the challenges, and we understand it's not an easy move, but we appreciate at the same time those TESOL top leaders who are supporting us. We're hoping that they will continue. Yeah, I think.
I just want to say that I appreciate both this presentation, but really just all the work you have done over the recent years. It's a really important work. It's an important project. And it sounds like you're making great progress and really doing the groundwork necessary to inform so many levels of stakeholders who might be then part of supporting and sustaining something like this over the long term.
I'm keeping my fingers crossed that Sharon and Charity won't flee away and leave me alone.
Chadia, I don't give up on stuff. I don't know.
They will never do that, I know, but
I do not.
I'm like, please, stay. I don't want to be alone in this.
Chadia, if I'm not getting
I was alone for 3 years. That's enough, right?
Right.
So.
I'm not getting paid for this, right, Chadia? And I'm still here. Like, I'm not going anywhere, Chadia.
And you're all spending your Saturday doing another, sounds like very interesting, hosting another interesting webinar, and your attendance has been just great on that.
Yeah.
So we are just closing up today. I have a couple of closing things to say. And just that, just a reminder, the PowerPoint is in the handouts. Of course, I've lost my notes about closing. And when you leave the session, please fill out the pop-up evaluation. It's only 3 questions. So that would be great if folks would fill that out. And we hope that everyone enjoyed the symposium. This is one of the final things at the symposium, and that you'll fill out the symposium evaluation when you receive that. And of course, we hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. And thanks for attending. Thanks for presenting. And let's keep all this good work on OER moving forward.
Thank you. I just want to say, for those who will watch the recording, find us on Call IS YouTube.
Yes, thank you. All right.
Thank
Bye,
you very much.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.